Political correctness is dead. I think that's the realization a lot of people are coming out of the election results with. The fact that Donald Trump was able to not just win, but win with the popular vote as well, especially after ramping up his rhetoric towards so many marginalized groups so fervently, really demonstrates to people that you can be racist or bigoted to the face of a demographic, and enough of them will still vote for you and support you that they'll elect you president. I think a lot of people are making this realization. You know, after that thing he said about Puerto Ricans, and then Puerto Ricans still overwhelmingly supporting Trump. Well, he didn't say it, but the guy he brought on for his show said it. The fact that he's always been so racist towards Latinos, and Latinos vote for him at a ridiculously high rate. It's clear that political correctness, this idea that we need to be super careful about our speech and not offend anyone from certain groups, because it's unseemly. It's not a thing that you should do. It's socially faux pas. That idea has broken apart to a large extent. We thought these were social faux pas, but it seems that in reality, America is quite racist. The groups that are receiving the racism are quite racist, it turns out. And the parts of America that aren't entirely racist are at the very least, at this point, they don't care about it. They certainly don't have any desire to call out or fight against racism. And so this realization, I think it's quite real. The whole jumping down people's throats for saying retard, for example. The idea that the left might start to abandon things like that culturally is definitely something I'm in favor of. Do you want to know what I'm not in favor of, though? The idea that the left needs to start ceding ground on genuine moral positions in order to avoid seeming too radical. And what am I talking about? None other than trans rights. You see, go back to 2015 or 2016, and this is my memory, the latest of my memory I can think back to where trans people were a thing I thought about, right? Binary trans man, trans woman, passing, non-passing, hormones, nor hormones, gender dysphoric or not. The internet and most of broad culture did not accept trans people as valid. The most you could hope for in centrist or apolitical spaces was an acceptance of trans people under the idea that they're adults cross-dressing and that it's rude to make fun of them for it. That was the closest you might really find in non-dedicated left-wing spaces to trans acceptance online and in real life in a lot of cases. A lot of this comes from the fact that for a lot of people, they don't know the difference between being trans and cross-dressing. They don't know the difference between being trans and what they might understand about or know of autogynephilia, which is I think debunked, it's not considered real anymore, old diagnosis that claimed that people who were trans were just sexually into the idea of having the opposite sex's genitalia, right? There's a lot of these ideas that are very popular, and there's a lot of gaps in knowledge that lead to best case scenario. What you could hope for was a lukewarm acceptance. Someone wanting to be polite and thus not saying anything rude or degrading towards you. But it wasn't acceptance, so to speak. And when Donald Trump got elected, this lack of acceptance accelerated beyond an indifference towards trans people, towards being the general expectation, to outright exclusion and hatred towards trans people becoming the expectation and the norm. This was very much the case during the Gamergate era. The idea of identifying as an attack helicopter was one of the most recurring jokes back then. The 41%? Is that the suicide statistic for trans people? The 41% jokes. These were the standard of humor back then. Trans people were absolutely the butt of it felt like 30% of the jokes that people were making online in like the hip and cool parts of the internet when I was like 17 back in that time. And so time passes and a countercultural push forms under Trump's presidency. And I noticed in real time, as we went from the average take on trans people being I identify as an attack helicopter, to swaths of cisgender people, including myself, I was part of this swath, getting educated primarily through a wave of progressive content online that actually made a good point of arguing against the common misconceptions and educating the viewer enough to pique the interest, enough to do like research on your own and figure out the truth that trans people they're not groomers, they're not deranged, they're not cross-dressers, they're not autogynephiliacs. It's a very deep and complicated issue, but trans people are valid. There's some medical research behind it. There's sociological arguments and support for it. It's a deeper conversation than anyone would have known to begin with, but to have your eyes open to that, somebody has to like break the ice of the conditioning, right? And that started to happen like back in 2018, 2019, and I started to see a lot more general cultural support for trans people, particularly binary trans people, and particularly if they pass, like if they've been doing hormones for a while and they do their makeup well, or they dress well, or they just look good, right? They pass well, right? There definitely like that would be the best way to see the most acceptance as a trans person. But you can think back to a few years ago how non-binary people got the shit end of the stick. Like being non-binary was all of a sudden I identify as a toothbrush. What are they going to identify as next? A car? What are they going to identify as next? Insert inanimate object? Dolphin? That was like the running joke for a while, was that non-binary people are taking it too far. Like, yeah, sure, if you have gender dysphoria and you identify as a man or a woman or a real gender, then you're a real trans person. But if you're non-binary, you're a trans trender. This became the idea. It was like non-binary people became the new target focus for the hate, the new group to push back against receiving acceptance and rights and whatnot. And so I thought for a while that non-binary rights were going to be the big civil rights issue around LGBT stuff that would be like the main focus in the coming years. I was wrong. In the past few years, America has backslid on this issue. On a statistical level, America has backslid. Support for trans people has dropped, like for trans people generally, has dropped notably since the right started focusing on trans people in sports. In fact, I think it's about 95% of Americans say trans people should not be allowed to participate in the sport, the gender of sport they identify with. It's one of the most overwhelming, that's going too far, trans people, wedge issues that America has. Like, the vast majority of Americans do not like the idea of trans people in sports. And so, the right hyper-focused on that. And now when you poll Americans' opinions on the trans issue, compared to years past, their general opinion on trans people has dropped. It's 70% according to an NBC News article, still the overwhelming majority, but thanks for More Perfect America. Thank you for grabbing the numbers. And the source, not just the numbers, but sourcing it too. Yeah, pretty overwhelming majority there. And with that in mind, I think a lot of politicians, a lot of pundits, example, the Young Turks, and many companies are interpreting this as America is shifting decidedly right. They elected Donald Trump with a popular vote, despite him getting way more radically right-wing. Clearly, this progressive stuff is not... It's not doing well. It's not resonating with people. And as a company in particular, if we want to make as much money as possible, maybe we cut out the woke crap, as the chuds might call it. Ironic segment, I know, when we were just talking about how go woke, go broke isn't real, and it's not, to be clear, but it's starting to seem like the companies have been convinced it is. And the reason for that is this particular story. Well, a lot of things, but this story is what made me decide to make this segment. Disney pulls transgender storyline from Pixar's Win or Lose streaming series. Pixar's original animated series, Win or Lose, will no longer include a transgender storyline in a later episode, The Hollywood Reporter has learned. They've straight up pulled an already created episode from being made public because they don't want the negative press of having a pro-trans episode in their Disney animated show. That is a full-on report of the fact that they believe that either A, trans rights are not a important enough thing that even if it's not popular, they should still empower that, or that they are actually convinced that demonstrate or having a trans character is going to hurt their bottom line so much because being pro-trans is not a financially successful thing to do. Apparently, Disney thinks that, and they might be right. I think this is actually less so, look how bad Disney is for this, and more so a wake-up call. Trans rights have gotten significantly less popular in the last few years since Joe Biden got elected. Donald Trump's victory probably wasn't even close to primarily off of the idea that trans people need to be stopped, but the fact that he spent so much time cracking down, the right has spent so much time cracking down on trans people, did not hurt Trump's chances in the election even slightly. The series follows a co-ed middle school softball team named the Pickles in the week leading up to their championship game. Each of the 8 episodes center on the off-the-field life of a character and their point of view, whether it be a player, a parent, or coach, or an umpire. A spokesperson for Disney confirmed that the story arc was removed and provided the following statement to the THR. When it comes to animated content for a younger audience, we recognize that many parents would prefer to discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms and timeline. There it is, guys. Your rights should be up to the parents of these kids. Whether or not these kids are learning that you're a human being deserving of respect and understanding should be up to those kids' parents and their political views. It's the classic, 90s era rhetoric about gay people. Don't put gay people in kids' media. It should be the parents who tell them that gay people exist. Their parents should find the right time and place to tell them about the existence of gay people and how their kids should feel about the existence of gay people. It should be up to the parents. The character remains in the show, but a few lines of dialogue that reference the gender identity are being removed. A source close to Win or Lose said the studio made the decision to alter course several months ago. Disney declined to comment on any further details. It's not the first time the company has come under scrutiny for LGBTQ+ storylines, particularly regarding its animated content. In 2022, controversy erupted both inside and outside of Disney following former CEO Bob Chapek's much-criticized response to Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. In June of that year, Pixar's Lightyear included a same-gender relationship in Kiss. See, we are backsliding. We're backsliding, guys. I haven't been exaggerating when I say this. Years ago, a Pixar movie featured a gay relationship and kiss. Now we're cutting trans people out of shows to avoid upsetting the homophobes. We're backsliding. Pixar's Lightyear, which also sparked controversy. Disney's Animation's Strange World, which featured an openly gay lead character, opened several months later. Both films failed to perform domestically or overseas, earning just $226.4 million and $73.6 million respectively at the global box office. I've literally never heard of Strange World. I imagine it's not one of Disney's most popular franchises. Doesn't surprise me it didn't do well. And Lightyear is Lightyear was the weirdest thing ever because it wasn't a prequel. It wasn't about Buzz Lightyear, the character we know from the Toy Story movies. It was about Buzz Lightyear, the real human astronaut who inspired the toys that Buzz Lightyear, the toy from Toy Story, is a model of. It's like the clearest cash grab movie that even if you're like a fan of Toy Story, there's nothing there for you to latch on to. Like, if you grew up watching Toy Story, you have no interest, you have no reason to go watch Lightyear. So it failed, obviously. Like, it just kind of, it didn't fail, it just underperformed, I guess. And so, there you go. It was because of the gay kiss, clearly. LGBTQ plus content faces challenges in certain international markets where a country may impose a more restrictive age rating or ban on the content altogether as well. This is true. Some of the biggest markets in the world right now for entertainment consumption, like Russia, China, and whatnot, these countries are overtly hostile to homosexuality. Saudi Arabia, UAE, yeah. They ban shows with... So, like, a lot of these big companies that want a large multinational audience, we're backsliding in large part because other countries never stepped up. They never stepped forward to backslide. And there's such a big market that these companies are going to start not just considering the American market, which may be more progressive, but maybe the Russian and Chinese market too, which are far more conservative because they're going to be bigger money makers. This is apparently the leaked scene that was removed. This is apparently what Disney decided was too extreme and too pro-LGBT for them to risk. Here, let me stop the music. We don't need Elwyn Forrest right now. Alright. Like, yeah. This is what Disney had to cut because they consider it too controversial and they don't want to lose out on foreign markets and the conservative demographic in America. It's a show, not a movie. It's a new Pixar animated show that's in the works. Apparently, some animators were kind of pissed about that getting cut, considering it leaked. It's a pretty big deal for a Pixar project to have to leak before it comes out. Jesus. Yeah, guys. When I tell you that we're backsliding, like America is politically backsliding, I'm not joking. Or I shouldn't say we're backsliding, we backslid. I don't know if the backslide is continuing or if it will continue. I in fact think we're going to see America get more progressive than ever in the next 4 years. But it definitely feels like America has become more conservative than it's been in a long time in the last year or so. And I cannot believe how right I was about how Americans will vote for Hitler himself if he promises lower gas prices. I said it a million times before the election. Americans would elect the reanimated corpse of literally Hitler if he said, "And I will lower the gas prices to $2.99 a gallon." And they'll be like, "Really? $2.99 a gallon? Oh my god!" And they would vote for Hitler's reanimated corpse. They would vote for Hitler the Lich. I also expect that Trump in $2.99 still a lot. It wouldn't even be like that big of an overpromise. So it would be, honestly, Hitler would probably raise gas prices to like $8 a gallon when you think about it. Because think about how Germany handled their oil during World War II. Like, Germany had massive oil shortages during World War II, and they ran out of gas. So Hitler would actually probably raise gas prices. He would promise to lower them, but he would probably raise them. Just like Trump's going to. They liquefied coal. You gotta do what you gotta do. They didn't have any fucking oil. Anyway, guys, with all that said, if you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like or a comment or both. It really does help the channel a lot, whether you're watching live or after the fact. It really, really does. And of course, if you want to see more from me, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell icon if you haven't already. And follow my social medias, linked down below in the description of this video or stream. I really do appreciate it, especially joining my fan Discord. It's the main hub of my community and fan base, so I hope to see you around. Finally, though, if you've got the money for it and you feel like it, consider supporting me financially by donating, subscribing, or gifting a sub on my website, xanderhall.com/live, or supporting me through YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, StreamElements, Patreon, or buying merch through the Streamlabs link down below. Regardless, though, of how you support me, even if you're a lurker, thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a good one.